Hello guys, we are back with another Leetcode challenge. Let's see the today's challenge. And today's challenge is encode and decode TinyURL. This question is fall into the category of medium. So let's deep dive into the question. What actually question asks? So this is a comparison problem to system design problem. Okay, this is the notes given by the question. So let's read the problem statement. TinyURL is a URL sorting services where you enter a URL this and it return a short URL like this. Design a class to encode a URL and decode a tiny URL. There is no restriction on how your encode decode algorithm should work. You just need to ensure that a URL can be encoded to a tiny URL and tiny URL can be decoded to the original URL. So implement the solution class and solution initialize. In the solution is a constructor, so initialize the object of the system. And here is a given a two member functions. First member function in encode which output string and take the parameter string. So in that case you have to return a tiny URL from this long URL. And there is a decode member function. In that decode member function, what you're going to do, you just going to return the original URL from this sort URL. It is guaranteed that the given sort URL can be encoded by the same object. So what's so little bit understand more with using example one. You have a given this URL, this HTTPS problem design tiny URL, and what's your duty? You have to just pass this thing into the encoded and get a tiny URL and corresponding this tiny URL, pass this tiny URL in decode, and after again you have to receive this long URL. So that's your motto here. So how can you do that? For doing this, you should know one thing. Okay. Uh, for you should know one thing. What is the one thing is that you have to good knowledge. Actually, this question is why dislike. This is only one reason because the tiny URL you are making, if its length is greater than the long URL, it can be acceptable. So that is the drawback of this question. They didn't restrict. So that is the drawback. That's why this question is highly disliked. So if you want to solve this problem, not knowing the not knowing to implement a design algorithm which generate such type of the string, so you just what you're going to do, you just add some element into some string into it, and after then delete this some element and return the value. So let me just try to solve this problem easily. So what's my motto? I'll generate a string. I'll generate a string. Let's name it str. What is actually stored? Store A B C D E F G H I J K L M N O P Q R S T U V W X Y Z. So I'll made a string which is going to take the value from me here. And what I'm going to do in sort URL, I'm only do one thing. I'll edit str and my long URL here, long URL here, long URL here. It's going to make a encoded string. My encoded string not a tiny, it's a larger than my long URL. And after that, what I'm going to do, I'll just return this long URL, but my short URL contain this str and long URL, so I have to remove this long str string. So how can I do that? First I have to call sort URL dot sub str, and after that I just pass it 626 because I know The total character is here is 26, so I have to remove this element. So that's why I'll just pass it 26. It start the index of 26, so my 26 index is starting from this long URL first index. So I guess it's going to work. That's the drawback. I'll just take the advantage of the drawback. Otherwise, if you want to do honestly, I'll try to solve the honestly too. So let's submit this code, guys, and it's acceptable. That's the drawback of this question. So that's why I don't like this question right now. But if you want to solve into the correct way, so how can you approach? You generate this string, and after generating this string, what you're going to do, you have to make two maps. One map is going to map with what I'm going to using two unordered map. One map is a string to string type containing key string and value string. What is actually denote here? I am going to store long URL, a short URL to long URL. Short URL is my key and long URL is my values. In that case, how can we know, how can we generate a short URL? For generating the short URL, I'm going to select, I'll generate this length, this taking this string, and call the random function, and take the number 5 to 6 from here. After taking this, I'll just store into the temp. Let me just write the code, then you understand. I'll create an unordered map of string. Let's name a map. And here what I'm going to do, I'll generate a short URL and treat as a key, and put the value of this long URL into it, and return my what, this short URL here, same like this, and return, call it my map short URL. I get my long URL. So that's the motto. But how can I generate a tiny URL? For generating a tiny URL, I'll take a loop, and in this loop I'll just take 8 or 9 characters and call a rand function, and take random character from here and generate a URL, and return this URL from here. It treat like a short URL and just take the value from here. So that's another and appropriate way to do this question. So if you have any doubt in this code section, let me know in the comment section. I resolve your doubt as soon as possible, and try to solve this problem with this short tiny URL, not a long URL. I'll just solve the long URL here because I'll try to show you how this question is highly disliked. So that's my motto.